One of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our universe is whether it's even real. While it may intuitively seem to be, seeing as we live in and interact with reality our entire lives, the truth is that the matter is far more complex than you might think. In fact, it's so complicated that science itself cannot rule out that this universe may not exist at all. It is completely possible that this is all a computer simulation. So, could the very nature of our reality be digital? As much as this might sound like the plot of a science fiction story, this is no reason to dismiss the argument. Key figures in science suggest that it is in fact quite probable that we're living inside a simulation. Neil deGrasse Tyson puts the odds at 50-50 that our entire existence is a program on someone else's hard drive.
Simulating universes becomes a pastime among those who have access to highly powerful computers. And we are in a universe, we are probably in a simulated universe, even if one of those universes is actually real.
University of Oxford's philosopher Nick Bostrom suggested that members of an advanced civilization with enormous computing power might decide to run simulations of their ancestors. They would probably have the ability to run many such simulations, to the point where the vast majority of minds would actually be artificial ones within the simulations rather than their original ancestral minds. According to billionaire Elon Musk, computing technology has advanced so much in the past 40 years that soon we are going to be able to create video game simulations that are indistinguishable from reality.
40 years ago, we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. The odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
And if that's the case, how do we know it hasn't already happened? Now, at least 2 billionaires are funding scientists in an effort to try and break us out of this simulation. If you, me, and every person and thing in the cosmos were actually characters in some giant computer game, we wouldn't necessarily know it. According to Eugene Wigner, while a number of philosophical ideas may be logically consistent with present quantum mechanics, materialism is not. Materialism was a view of many scientists that implies that all that exists is matter and energy and the rearrangements of it. Materialism is an extreme view of realism, which implies that a physical reality exists independent of observation. Realism was a commonly accepted view which was shaken with the advent of quantum mechanics. Idealism, opposing realism, claims that reality is a mental construct and doesn't exist independent of observation. One potential indicator of a simulation is the phenomenon of wave function collapse. In nature, subatomic particles can exist in different states. They can have energy and move at different speeds. But in quantum mechanics, particles are thought of as existing as all possible states at the same time, including existing in 2 places at once, until you observe them. Then they choose a state to exist in. Yes, you can change the behavior of a subatomic particle just by looking at it. Its quantum wave function collapses the moment you look at it, because when it is observed, its actual position becomes known, and it's no longer a matter of probability, but of reality. Subatomic particles were thought to exist like tiny bits of matter that exist independent of our observation, not like continuous waves of energy. However, sending electrons through a double slit showed they acted like waves of energy instead of tiny bits of matter. Even when sending 1 electron at a time, the same result happened. However, when one set up a measuring device at one slit, the results changed and the electrons acted as one would expect, as tiny bits and not as waves. If you'd like to know more about this, click here to watch this video. In such a state of affairs, is the universe really there when you aren't looking at it? Well, in a sense, no, it's not. The conclusion made by the double-slit experiment is that the act of observing caused the wave function to collapse and create the existence of matter, either as a particle or as a wave. This infers that matter doesn't exist independent of observation or measurement, and that the act of a conscious observer creates the existence of the physical objects and the properties they entail. There are other reasons to think reality might be virtual. For instance, the more we learn about the universe, the more it appears to be based on mathematical laws. All the secrets of the universe are solved using math. In fact, we can explain the universe better using math than we can with words. If everything is mathematical, everything could be broken down to binary code. An example of this is Conway's Game of Life, a simple mathematical zero-player game that works on a grid and has a small set of rules dictating whether each section in the grid should create or delete a square to populate it. Despite its simple rule set, it's possible to create a machine capable of computing anything inside the Game of Life. Also, people have managed to create a Game of Life within the Game of Life.
You're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos.
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
Is it possible that God is in fact a programmer? When contemplating the simulation hypothesis and life in general, free will comes into question. The Everett many worlds interpretation holds that all possibilities described by quantum theory simultaneously occur in a multiverse composed of mostly independent parallel universes. The theory of parallel worlds, or the multiverse, posts an infinite number of realities with an infinite number of possibilities within them. Georges-Louis Borges compared the multiverse to a library. Within the library, there are an infinite number of books. Some differ by just a letter, others are completely different stories. The theory has all sorts of crazy implications for the meaning of life. But if there really are multiple universes, why did they come about? How come there are so many? If we're in a simulation, the multiple universes are multiple simulations running at once. Each simulation has its own set of variables, and this isn't random. The simulation's creator plugged in different variables to test different scenarios and observe different outcomes. Ex-NASA physicist Dr. Thomas Campbell, in his attempt at unifying physics with metaphysics, has suggested his own model for a digital universe based on the existence of a fundamental consciousness. While best described in his three-part book series My Big Toe, you can click here to watch this very insightful lecture. The idea that the universe isn't real isn't a new one. In fact, it's very old. All religions are to varying extents based on the idea that this is all a simulation created by a deity. Some sects of Buddhism consider perceived reality literally unreal. As a contemporary teacher puts it, in a real sense, all the visions that we see in our lifetime are like a big dream. According to Gnostic tradition, the material world was actually created by a demiurge, commonly identified with the God of the Old Testament, not the true God of good, who is utterly transcendent and exists far beyond the created world as we understand it. This idea began to move into the realms of science and philosophy with René Descartes' evil demon concept. Descartes claimed that if you were to be possessed by a demon, you could never quite be sure that you weren't being deceived by it into thinking the world around you was something that it wasn't. If this is true, and we are in fact living in a simulation, why does it matter? Well, this theory implies that consciousness creates physical reality. New Agers might then be right when they claim our thoughts create and influence our world. The quality of your existence is based upon what you believe to be true, or what you've been programmed into thinking is true. In the Matrix movie, Neo is aided in his education about the nature of the Matrix by a young boy dressed in the garb of a Buddhist monk. He explains to Neo that he must realize that there is no spoon, and hence our ability to change the world around us is actually a matter of our ability to change our own minds. Either the amount of people out there capable or willing to create a simulation is close to zero, or the amount of realities that exist that aren't simulations is close to zero. This does of course assume that it's possible to create a simulation of an entire universe, but then again we could be in a simulation of our galaxy, or even our own solar system. Assuming it is possible to simulate a universe, until we find a way to dispute that, logic seems to point out that we are in fact in a simulation. So what do you think? Are we living inside multiple layers of simulated realities? Is the very nature of reality, in essence, indistinguishable from a sophisticated digital simulation meant to expand the overall consciousness of a sentient universe? Or will we never be able to reach such a technological ability due to the divergence of interest or some unknown filter in our future timeline? I hope by now you'll be able to understand the various arguments around the idea of a simulated reality and perhaps explore new possibilities in your own personal inquiry. As always, discussion and debate is encouraged, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Until next time, blessed be.